Bom dia, gente, de novo. A todas, todos, todes. Eu estou especialmente feliz. Eu estava conversando com a Rita, assim, esse final de semana, o feriado, foi intenso. Eu assisti aquele filme Marighella, que eu recomendo muitíssimo. Um filme pesadaço e a gente teve, assim, me mexeu muito comigo e... Ah, great. E ontem a gente teve notícias tristes de perda de pessoas queridas. A Pel, que é uma educadora,
Oh no.
que é uma referência.
What can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
But no one else.
E o Jaider também. E aí eu comecei a conversar agora de manhã com a Rita e a gente tava, nossa, sim, começamos, nossa, que quanta coisa. E aí o Stephan entrou e o Stephan tá passando por um momento bem difícil também. É, e E ele chegou com tanta vida que eu e a Rita nos emocionamos ao contrário. Ele chegou falando: eu cheguei no lugar mais longe, eu acho que eu já cheguei, me preparando para essa sessão. E eu estou bastante feliz em poder estar aqui abrindo esse espaço e para a gente dialogar, e principalmente pelo presente de ter o Stephan chegando com tanta vida para estar entre nós. Eu agradeço todo mundo que está aqui hoje, algumas pessoas que eu conheço, outras que são novas. Eu sou a Bia, da Escola Schumacher Brasil, e estou aqui hoje ao lado da Fernanda, que já está traduzindo agora do português para o inglês para o Stephan. A Fê é uma parceira da escola também há muitos anos. A Rita Mendonça, que está sempre com a gente, também é da escola. E o Lu, que também está aqui, o Luiz. E eu vou passar, a gente vai abrir com uma fala do Stephan, que vai falar aí em torno de 45 minutos, 1 hora, e depois a gente vai ter uma conversa. O grupo é pequeno, então isso vai nos permitir que a gente consiga ter uma roda de conversa. Eu vou pedir para quem puder e quiser ligar suas câmeras. É uma experiência muito boa quando a gente consegue se olhar. Então, se vocês se sentirem à vontade, ajuda a gente conseguir ter um pouco de um senso de uma roda de conversa, mesmo estando no digital. E aí, alguns detalhes técnicos. A Fê já está traduzindo, agora está traduzindo do português para o inglês. A gente vai ter a conversa aqui nesse ambiente em português. E aí, a Fê vai vai traduzir o Stephan do inglês para o português. Então, a partir do momento que eu convidar o Stephan para começar, se vocês quiserem daí ouvir a sessão pela tradução em português da Fê, tem um botãozinho que no meu computador está escrito em português, está escrito interpretação. Se tiver em inglês, talvez esteja interpretation. E aí vocês vão selecionar a língua que vocês querem ouvir, e aí vocês vão conseguir ouvir o áudio da Fê. Se vocês quiserem voltar, vocês podem selecionar o desligado. E aí o Stephanie, então, vai fazer a fala dele em inglês, a Fê vai traduzir. E aí depois a gente vai ter a conversa em português e a Fê vai traduzindo para o inglês. E aí quando o Stephan responder, vai traduzir de volta para o português. Aí depois eu explico como é que... Mas basicamente são esses dois botões. Para quem não está ainda familiarizado com o Zoom. Rita, quer dar um oi?
Olá, pessoal. Bem-vindo a todos. Muitas caras conhecidas. Alegria estar aqui num momento tão especial junto com o Stephan. Estou bem emocionada e muito ávida para ouvi-lo. Não só os conteúdos que ele está sempre pesquisando e trazendo, mas toda essa energia e essa amorosidade que ele traz na voz e na fala dele. Então, acho que é algo muito importante para nós aqui, para nossa maneira de seguir com tudo, toda a fonte que a gente recebe lá da Schumacher College, e muito especialmente na pessoa do Stephan. Obrigada, Stephan, por estar com a gente. E vamos lá, vai ser muito bom.
Stephanie, eu acho que eu queria pedir para você tocar mais um pouquinho antes de começar, mas eu já vou te convidar a sua fala inicial. Se você... You just have to unmute.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. So it's lovely that you're here for this exploration. Which I would like to start with this music from Venezuela, which is very near you. Venezuela is where I was born. So South America means a lot to me. I love the forests and the mountains and the oceans. So before I start, I have to sing this music to them, which is traditional music from Venezuela, joropo. Ay, gavilán, pío, 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 tú que vienes volando sobre el río. Something like that. Anyway, that's a good start. So, because what I want to try and talk about, let me find share screen, is about how we can bring that sort of sensitivity you find in the music, bring it into the science of the earth. How can we bring this into the science of the earth? Because if we could bring it into the science of the earth, then we might relate to the earth in a much more intelligent sort of way, and much more full of care and love than we have at the moment. And surely that's what we need now in our time. We need science. We need to find a way of loving the earth. So, una ciencia amorosa, that's nice. So that's what we're going to do. Una ciencia amorosa, I love that. It's really lovely. That's lovely. It's much better than... Am I not supposed to? I am, I think. All right, yeah, actually, no, it's good actually. So let's start now with this writer, Owen Barfield, this English writer. Oh, sorry, hang on a minute. Before the scientific, he tells us how did we see the world in the West? And remember, you're in Brazil, but you're still from the West. I mean, your ancestors are Portuguese, etc., mostly. So yeah, so you've got a fair dose of this the Western disease, really. Okay. But before the scientific revolution, how did people see the world in Europe? Or maybe more universally, maybe it's a more universal way of seeing. I think it's actually universal. And this universal way of being, which we humans have, which is our fundamental birthright. It's like air, like food, like water. It's absolutely fundamental. it's it's fundamental to our well-being. We can't be well as human beings unless we feel this. And that is that the world around us is our garment. As he said, as Barfield is saying, before the scientific revolution, the world was more like a garment, like my friend David Abraham would say, like a second body. Yeah,
Stefan,
yeah, rather,
can you hear
that's it,
me?
a segunda pelle, rather than a stage on which they move, like, here we are, look at us. Wow, human being, look at us. Oh, we, we can manipulate this, we can build a railway here, we can make a soya plantation there, we can do what we like. Yeah, so we want to get back to this, to feeling the earth like a garment. Yeah, that's.
Você consegue me ouvir?
And
Vou
the question
interromper.
is,
Interrompe ele só
can
um
we link that
minutinho.
with
Eu acho que,
science? Yeah, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
eu acho que é melhor ele desligar o áudio, porque ele tá te ouvindo e
Oh,
eu tô
what do you want me to do?
Exato.
Okay, now how do I've got to stop share to do that, don't I?
Yes, Stefan.
No, it's never. Well, never mind. Let's keep going because otherwise I'm going to have to stop share and we're going to waste.
No,
our
it's
time.
okay. It's okay. Because I feel like it's interrupting
right.
your flow, Stefan.
Okay, and then turn off.
You turn off interpretation for now.
And come back.
And then once you're done with the presentation, we go back into the buttons.
Okay.
Now you just turn it off.
Yeah, there. I turned it off, so I can only.
Brilliant.
Okay, sorry everyone. Sorry everyone about this.
Go ahead.
Anyway, okay, so you get the idea, right? That it's a big idea, though. I mean, it's not. It's an experience, I would say. It's more than an idea. That the world is your garment. And of course, the great idea, the same idea in Western culture is Gaia. You notice we're going in. Can you notice where we're going? We're starting very mythologically. Have you noticed? We're already going into the myth, and it's the myth where the energy is, where the healing is, where the interest is, where the life is. It's in the myth. That's where we need to find Gaia, in the myth. Then we can bring the science into it. But first we have to find the myth. It's terribly important. So I'm going to focus on that dimension of things, the mythical dimension, which of course Jung was so brilliant at explaining to us. Anyway, Gaia. Well, the first thing we say about Gaia is a sacred word. In other words, this garment is sacred. So she's the firstborn of primordial chaos. This garment that we wear, that we are, is the forests and the oceans and the biosphere. That's Gaia, and she's sacred. The ancient Greek myth tells us she was born, the firstborn of primordial chaos. I mean, this inconceivable intelligence of some sort that wanted to become something first made itself into the earth. I mean, that means the earth is incredibly powerful and important. That's Gaia. That's something of the myth. Can you feel that sort of mythical sense of Gaia? Can you feel it? It's something you can you need some imagination. That's the thing, it requires imagination. That's the faculty you need, not the intellect, but imagination. And this is some of the words from Hesiod, 700 BC. Look, how they spoke of Gaia, the beautiful, rose up, broad-bosomed. This is lovely. Look, she's the steadfast space of all things. She gives you security. And then fair Gaia gave birth to the stars, to all the sky, to the heaven, and to be a home for her and for the gods to whom she gave birth. Wow, that's who the earth is. Can we really feel? We have to really feel that, like it's like that. I mean, it's very difficult for us Westerners, scientifically educated, to feel it like that. That's how it has to be. It has to be like that. Otherwise, we won't save the earth. It's a big demand on the mythological dimension, which is why it needs the science to help it. So this is another ancient idea, the Anima Mundi, the soul of the world. It's the same sort of idea, you know, that the world is a great soul. So not only is this earth the firstborn of primordial chaos, she has a soul. The soul, the Anima Mundi, the soul of the world. She has an intelligence, an incredible intelligence. She speaks to us in dreams, in visions, mythologically, stories. This is the soulful aspect of Gaia, the myth, and some of the stories that we were told. You know, like in the medieval period, they felt the Earth was at the center of the solar system, and the planets were around the outside. And when you were born, you came from somewhere in here. You're about to be born. Your soul passed through each of the planetary spheres. And as it passed through each of the spheres, it picked up the qualities of those spheres. So depending on Mars, where Mars was, you would have a certain kind of relation to aggression, and it's blah, 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 blah. And then you'd be born, unique you. But you carry the whole universe within you. You know, it's a sort of, it's very astrological, of course, but it's very holistic, you know. It's the whole thing is a living fabric, everything, not just the Earth, the whole cosmos, the stars, the sky, everything is part of a living cosmos. And Barfield called this original participation. So he had a name for it, original participation. And he said we lost it, as of course during the scientific revolution we withdrew our participation, and we ended up thinking that matter is called positivism. Matter is all there really is, nothing else. There's no soul in anything, it's just matter. And he says we need to move from, and that's our disease, you see, that's the disease of the West. I mean, what Jung would say is, we got too far away from original participation using science. And if you get too far away from original participation using science and reasoning, you get to this, you think matter is all there really is, and then you're in real trouble. Then you start destroying the planet, because the intellect shouldn't be in control like that. Right? And so we need to have a balance between the intellect needs to approach the original participation and start working with it. This is the mythical domain. This is the scientific domain. And when you start working with them together, bingo, you get something emergent. It's quite fantastic. It's called he called it final participation. So I'm going to follow Barfield because I think it's very helpful, this scenario. Yeah, so the scientific revolution. Okay, so now, I hope in the short time we've got, I hope I've given you a sense of the original participation. Just let me say, in our part of the world, in South America, you know, we have so many indigenous tribes in the Amazon, for example, that had very powerful forms of, and still do, original participation, yeah. So in Latin America, you're gifted with this. Anyway, we've withdrawn the final participation. How are we going to get towards final participation? Well, let's focus on the withdrawal, the scientific revolution. Everything became a machine. There's no soul in anything, apart from the human, as Descartes would say. I've described the earth and the whole visible universe in the manner of a machine. But for him, he still believed in God, you know, and humans, there were souls, but only humans had them. Nothing else has a soul or an intelligence. And when, you know this, when his followers cut open live dogs and the dogs screamed in pain, he would say to the followers, ignore the screams, they're the creakings of a machine. I mean, that's a very extreme way to very far away from original participation. Goodness, you couldn't get further than that, you know. So he created this tremendous split between, on the one hand, the realm of the mind, and on the other hand, all this dead stuff outside the mind, which has no value whatsoever unless you turn it into money. And then what happens is, as Jung told us, we start feeling isolated in the cosmos because we're not involved with nature anymore. You know, natural phenomena have lost their symbolic implications. Now, what does he mean by that? That's very profound, you know, what he means by that. It basically means nature can teach you things, you know, but poetically, in a poetic, intuitive way. And then we no longer hear thunder is no longer the voice of a god. No river contains a spirit. No tree is the life principle of man. So we need to, what he's saying is, this is what we've lost. We need to find how to see that rivers have spirits again. We need to see that trees are the life principle of a man. Or maybe a special tree might be the life principle of me or you. We need to do that to be healthy psychologically, to love, to have a healthy society. We all need to do this with a tree. We all need to have a tree we go and consult with, perhaps. This is the implication. Because now we can't hear the voices of the stones, the plants, and the animals. It's our birthright in original participation. It's our birthright, like drinking water is my birthright. It's a fundamental human need to be able to learn how to maintain the connection. So from childhood, you never lose the connection of being able to hear voices speaking from stones, plants, and animals, and to somehow, speak to them. And we lose our contact with nature. And then we end up with our emotional energy just becomes zero, and we consume to fill the void. It's like a sort of black hole implosion, in one's consciousness. And then, of course, the Earth becomes really sick. These are the planetary boundaries, showing key measures of environmental or planetary health. And the green zone is a sort of safe area within which we can operate. But as soon as we go beyond the green zone, we're in real trouble. And this is in 2009. And we'd already surpassed 3 of the critical boundaries with this lifestyle that was kicked off by, you could say, not kicked off by the scientific revolution, but certainly facilitated by it, by that whole scientific worldview, hyper-rational worldview, which everything's just a dead machine. And we get the warming we've seen. I don't want to bore you with all these data. It's actually quite frightening to watch this graph, as the temperature's going up and up through the decades towards the 1.5 degree guide rail. It's going up and up and up and up and up. And this was several years ago. We're now at 1.2, so we're even closer to this. All right, so original participation, withdrawal participation, final participation. What is it? Well, what does original participation tell us about itself? It speaks in images. And this is one of the images, where's it gone? This is one of the images that original participation sends us about itself, to tell us about itself. It's called a mandala, this kind of round image. And it's something we have to contemplate, you see. So if you want, for me, I found this today. I thought, this is very nice. This really does help me get into final participation. It's very hard to describe what it is. Jung said a mandala is a psychological expression of the totality of the self. That's a big statement. I think it probably includes the whole planet, Gaia. See, there are animals in here and plants and things. So final participation, I think, involves Gaia for our times. We maybe can't get to final participation in our time because of this crisis until or unless we connect with Gaia. And the nice thing, we can use the science to help us. Perhaps. This is one of Jung's mandalas, by the way. And he said there were 4 ways of knowing to be whole. We have our thinking and so we've gone too far into our thinking in our culture. Right? And that's why we've got the crisis. We've lost our feeling. So we need to cultivate our feeling. And that's got to do with that feeling for original participation. Our intuition. We still use intuition and we still use sensing in service of thinking. But the feeling is in real trouble. We don't know how to feel anymore in our culture. We don't know what it means. I mean, of course, I love I love Julia, and I love my son, and I love I haven't got a dog, but if I had a dog, I would love my dog, But then, of course, feeling is more than that. Much more than that. I mean, it's a form of valuing the entire process itself, the whole process of life, the whole process of existing, of feeling the tremendous value in it. That's what we don't get with the thinking. The thinking tells us it has no value. It's just dead mechanical stuff. And if you manage to integrate all four, then I suppose you can be happy, or you can be whole, or or something like that. So he would say participation is an experience. Final participation is an experience, and we have to make an effort to get there. See, he talks about islanded consciousness. You see, we've been made into separate islands of consciousness by the mainstream culture. I get a twang in my stomach when I think about it. Really, that's how they've made us. Isolated consciousnesses consuming into the black hole of ecological disaster. So to get out of that, we need a special effort. You don't need theorizing. You don't need to think about it, but you need imagination. And the first glimpse is something aesthetic, something to do with beauty, derived from poetry or painting. And I said, yeah, but let's blend it with science. Shall we blend this with science and see what happens? So now we go to Gaia Theory, which is a new science of the earth. So now we're going to bring all that mythological stuff we were looking at, and we're going to bring it in contact with the intellect. Now, can you give me a time check, Bia? Because I've lost track of time. How much more time have I got?
Half an hour, Steph, or a bit more if you want to.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right. Okay, great. I'm not going to speak for half an hour. It means there's more time for discussion. Okay, excellent. So can we just do a brief check-in? Let me see. I like to do this at this point. If I can see everyone, Bia can see everyone. If you're happy, sort of do this, this is good. If you're not happy, don't be afraid to do that. And if you're sort of in between, and can you have a quick poll, Bia, for me to let me know? I'll close I can't see anyway, so I won't take it personally. I just want to make sure you're okay, that this is okay for you, you see? I really do. Is this okay?
Yeah, thumbs up, Stephan.
Thumbs up. Great. Thank you. All right. That's good. That's good. Okay, so we're going to bring this. I mean, I haven't done this before. This is all an experiment. This whole presentation. Okay. So let's bring it into the science. Okay. So if we look at the science, what does science tell us about the Earth, Gaia? Well, basically, the basic story is, or used to be, the Earth is a dead ball of rock, right? And it's got some atmosphere, and it's got some water, but it's the rocks that are in charge of the whole surface environment, because the rocks, they emit carbon dioxide and other gases, and those gases are greenhouse gases, many of them. So they determine the temperature of the Earth, right, of the surface of the atmosphere. So the rocks actually make the atmosphere, and they also help to regulate the temperature. They determine the temperature, so they're in charge. And then there's also these little piffly little things called the biota, a bit of slime here, bacteria, a few trees, just slime, nothing much, on the surface. So the rocks are in charge, and the biota, which is like a slime on the surface, not significant really. I mean, very interesting and amazing and all of that. But it can't possibly have an influence on the whole planet. No, impossible. So it has to just adapt to the conditions which the environment or the rocks are setting for it. You see, it has no influence. That's the standard. That was the standard view in science. That's the mechanistic understanding of the Earth. Okay, which we still have. But it's changing, and it's changing because of one man called James Lovelock, who was my teacher. I mean, I can't believe it really that he was my teacher. Anyway, he said he's a brilliant scientist. He's still alive. He's 102. He's a brilliant scientist, a brilliant inventor, very independent-minded, very, very creative. I mean, a real scientific genius of very high order. I mean, really something. He said, no, it's not. And then he was joined in this new way of understanding the Earth, which is not mechanistic, by Lynn Margulis, another genius scientist who also taught at Schumacher College. She was an evolutionary biologist, really interested in bacteria and how they get together to form new kinds of cells, And she got together with James Lovelock, and together they proposed. Well, Lovelock proposed it first. She helped him, but then All right, you ready for this? Now, what I'm going to show you, let's take it as a mandala structure, okay? So I'm going to draw a scientific diagram now. But at the same time, let's see it as mandala. And let's see what happens to our awareness and our consciousness when we do that. Yeah, all right. So this new view of Lovelock and Lovelock, then later with Margulis, is that the Earth has got these two aspects: the living beings, you know, plants, animals, bacteria, fungi, protoctista, etc. You know, all the biosphere, right? You know, can you imagine the depth and breadth of the forests in the Amazon and the boreal forests and all the marine organisms in the sediments and in the coral reef? I mean, the whole lot of it. That's the biota. They say the biota is so powerful a force in Gaia that it influences hugely what kind of rocks we've got, what kind of atmosphere we've got, and whether or not we have any water. It's all due to the biota. But once the biota have kind of, if you like, created these conditions, then these very same conditions feed back to affect the biota. So only the biota that can survive in the conditions they've created for themselves survive. You know, from a rational point of view, it's circular, and so it gets very difficult to think about it in conventional cause and effect terms. But you get that. You see, there's a mandala structure. There's a mandala. It's a going back and like a circle. The biota affect the rocks, the atmosphere, and the water, and the rocks, the atmosphere, and water affect the biota. It's already a circular mandala movement. And what they suggest, what Lovelock's idea was, that once this interaction starts, once this mandala starts to move, the mandala of all the elements coursing through the surface of Gaia, the mandala of her clouds and her rain and all the nutrient cycles, all the mandalas of life and death, all those mandalas that are going on. Mandalas within mandalas. It really is like that. I know it sounds very hippie-ish, but it is. It's mandalas within mandalas. It's a fractal mandala structure, you could say, from a mathematical point of view. Anyway, there it is. And they gave this he said, what happens when all this starts to interact is something quite unexpected comes out of this, which is that the whole is able to it's sort of a self-regulation of the entire surface of the environment of this planet, which emerges out of all these interactions in some strange way we can't understand fully. For example, if it gets too hot for some reason, let's say there's lots of volcanic eruptions, well, then there's more CO2 in the atmosphere, it gets warmer, and therefore some of the biota start feeling that warmth and they start growing better on the soil. Let's say trees and plants, they start weathering rocks, they start sucking out more CO2 from the atmosphere, and that cools things down, basically. You know, and if it gets too cold, there are other feedbacks that make it warmer. And there's many of such feedbacks. It's very complex. So that's the kind of idea of emergent self-regulation, as they would say in science. So that's Gaia from a scientific point of view. But can you get the sense of how this is a mandala structure? Well, look, let's look at some of the organisms involved in doing this. Okay, this is all very theoretical. Let's finish this little section by taking the mythological dimension into the actual living world of Gaia. All right. So this is a kind of theoretical mandala structure. Now let's go find is there a real mandala structure in the real world itself? Look at this. Now, is that a mandala structure or what? And this is actually a microscopic marine alga. And look at those shells. This is a single cell. It lives on the surface of the ocean. Okay, it's a single cell. It's a beautiful name. It's called Coccolithophore. It's photosynthetic. And it takes in calcium bicarbonate from the seawater and it sculpts it inside its cell into these beautiful chalky plates of calcium carbonate, chalk. And they're white. I mean, they're mandala structures. I mean, I don't know what it means. It's just very beautiful, though, isn't it? Don't you think? I mean, we're studying mandalas, you know. We're seeing Gaia as a mandala. We go to look to one of the key Gaian organisms that's regulating the climate, and it makes mandalas on its surface. Well, I don't know. I find that interesting. Anyway, here they are. You see, that's a more mythological understanding, you see. I mean, of course, it's ridiculous from the point of view of cause and effect. How could there be a connection? But you see, from a more mythological, poetic perspective, there is a connection. There is a connection. It's not a surprise that there's a mandala structure at this point. We would expect something like that, you see. And so it's taking it that seriously. That's what I think we need to do. So, here we go. We're nearly finished. I'm now going to just go into the mandala a bit more. Here's the southwest England. I'm around here somewhere. And this is the English Channel. You see this great white sort of mancha, stain in the ocean? That's made of billions of cells of these guys. Trillions. And the chalk is white, so you can see it from space, okay? Now, can you see we're already moving into a much bigger Gaian dimension now, because those little algae, they live on the surface of the ocean. Here they are. And basically, they release a gas into the ocean. They synthesize a gas inside their cells, dimethyl sulfide gas, quite a complicated molecule. And they put it out there, and that molecule goes up into the air, where there's lots of water vapor, which is just waiting to become a cloud. It wants something to condense on. And when these little molecules appear, the water vapor can condense on them and become a cloud. It becomes a cloud. All those water molecules become a cloud. And those clouds are dense and white, and they radiate solar energy back to space. They act like mirrors. And that cools the entire, has an effect on the temperature of the entire planet. Because some of these blooms of Coccolithophores can be massive, huge. So we're talking how these little tiny organisms in the ocean are having planetary consequences, Gaian consequences, Gaian effects on the climate. See, already it starts to shift your perspective in some way. I'm interested to know how you'd see it. So is there a mandala? Is there a mandala story in this as well? Okay, well here we go. Let's try. So this wiggly line is the interface between the ocean and the atmosphere. Okay, so here we're in the ocean. Here are the algae. They're called Coccolithophores, those ones that make the mandalas. So here we are. A bloom is when you get trillions and trillions, like I showed you that picture from space, you know. You get trillions and trillions of those, okay? Then, the more of those there are, the more of those algae there are, clearly the more gas they're going to produce. Would you agree? So I'm going to draw a solid arrow, you see, between those two. That means the more of this, the more of that. But it also means if this goes down, then this will go down. That's what solid arrow, okay? Yeah, okay, so if there's more gas production. Now remember, we're trying to look at this mythologically, okay? So we're trying to look at it from a mythical perspective, from a mandala perspective. It's science, 100%. But we're trying to look at it we're trying to bring the myth into it, the mythological dimension into this. Because I think anyway, and I'm not the only one, you know, that unless we do this, we've got no hope in hell of surviving on this planet. Because we need to rediscover that mythological connection with Gaia. So we're doing it with the science. We want to bring it into the science. Okay, so the more dimethyl sulfide, more gas, the more clouds. You can guess what's going to happen now. So there are more clouds, and so therefore, these clouds reflect solar energy back to space, right? So let's take this slowly. We're going around a mandala here. You know, you have to go around mandalas with tremendous respect. So, you know, okay, we reach clouds. Maybe we just for a moment think of clouds, okay? You thought of clouds just for a moment? Okay, that's good. All right. So now, the more clouds there are, the colder the sea surface temperature. And the colder the sea surface temperature, the fewer algae will grow, because this is not so cold. Sorry, it's colder, so therefore they grow less well in cold waters. So now with fewer coccolithophores, there's less gas production, so there's fewer clouds. And if there's fewer clouds, the sun can now warm the surface of the sea very nicely. There's nothing like a cloud to reflect the energy back to space. So the energy can just warm the sea. Can you imagine just swimming in a warm sea? In Brazil, come on, you have, well, it depends where you are, of course, but if you're by the coast, God, the beaches you've got there. I know. Oh, well, from Venezuela, I know. Yeah, I imagine myself swimming in a warm sea. And then, of course, that means the temperature goes up and we get more coccolithophores. They start blooming. They like the warm temperature. So they produce more gas. Therefore, there's more clouds. Therefore, the temperature goes down. Therefore, there's less coccolithophores. You see, you could actually, it is a form of meditation, actually. To take this mythologically. I would, for example, I would spend some time meditating on, well, visualizing a cloud perhaps, or just looking at clouds out of my window. Then sea surface temperature, maybe I would go and get a jug of water and just feel the temperature of the water. Coccolithophore blooms, I have to imagine those, or look at the satellite image. The gas, sometimes when you go down to the sea, at least in this part of the world, you pick up some seaweed and it smells of that tangy smell. In bromeliads you might have that, I don't know. So you can bring something that has that tangy smell gas and you sort of just work with it in some way. You don't know what's going to come out of it, okay? You just don't know. I found for myself what comes out of it is much deeper connection and deeper participation. It seems to be bringing me towards more towards what I understand to be final participation, which is very nice. It feels good, It feels good because it feels that the universe really is full of meaning. And it wants to help us, this meaning. And especially at this time of tremendous planetary danger, of the kind the planet has never seen before. A tremendous planetary crisis. Easily on the scale of the Permian mass extinction, if not worse. So this is, serious matter, this. You've got, So, well, that's really all I wanted to say. Just to say, though, that the forests, we focused on the ocean, okay, but I want to say the forests also emit cloud-seeding chemicals. This is a Cecropia from our part of the world in Latin America, the tropics. And they produce these chemicals, which also seed clouds. But a lot of them are also medicinal for us, They smell nice. They're good for us, You don't want to rub them on your skin, And they have tremendously beneficial impacts and effects on us, and they're given to us by the plants. I mean, look how complex these molecules are. Look, every angle has a carbon atom in it. That's really complex. They've been synthesized very carefully by the plant. I mean, distilled through photosynthesis and given to seed clouds, but also maybe for medicines for the forest. So now from a mythological perspective, you bring the mythological perspective even down to the level of molecules, and we start to feel these as living beings of some sort, as personalities, each a unique personality with a unique quality, each a mythic being, each molecule a mythic being. I think that's how it has to be for me anyway. I think our culture needs to go back in that direction. Descartes and whatnot, they took us too far. As Jung said, we needed to have some separation from the unconscious, he calls it the unconscious, or from the original participation. We needed some separation from it so we could reflect on it and start a relationship with it of some sort. But we've gone so far away from that with our science and with the Cartesian split and the scientific revolution that we've lost our connection with it way too much. So we need to bring it back into balance, and then we find the earth. And to finish, here's a mandala. You ready? I think what I'll do is I'll just play you some music. Okay, I'm going to show you, just to finish, I'm going to show you a mandala called Anima Mundi by the British alchemist Robert Flood. I think it was made around, I don't know, 1500 or something, or 1600, I'm not sure. You ready? So with that, we'll finish the section. There we are. I'll just say a few words about it. So you see, you probably think, oh, what's this? I used to think like this when I saw these sorts of images. Oh, it's so old-fashioned, and you know, why am I interested in this? And it's very nice, but you know, that's my scientific training. And then today I started looking at, hang on, wait a minute, look, there's a planet right in the middle of it. Wow. And then you start looking more closely, you know, and you see elementum, aqua et terra. So, hey, this looks quite Gaian. Elements and water and earth. And then there's a sort of minerals and vegetables, and there's different kinds of animals here. And there's different kind of vegetables, different kind of minerals. And then I can't quite make out what's going on in here. There's a lot going on. And look at this, there's a planet behind her. There's a planet. And I mean, this is quite something, you know. And there's also planets going around all of this. So this is a cosmological dimension. And then what's she doing here? What's this business? What's going on here? Well, so there's two approaches one can take at this point. One is to say, this is total nonsense, and I'm not going to bother with this anymore. You know, it's very nice. Or the other thing is, this is an image which has been given to us by original participation. And I take this very seriously. This has come from original participation. This is a gift from the birthright consciousness which we have, so we can get back into connection with her. And it's very curious that this is very Gaian. I saw that today for the first time. You know, it's animals, minerals, vegetables. I mean, the Gaia. Look, there's Gaia right there, and the cosmos. And then there's her. Well, she's called the Anima Mundi, the soul of the world, and she's connected to this god. Or, well, I'm not sure I like it all. You know, the sky god and all of that. But anyway. And then there's this. She's giving some nourishment to the whole earth through her breast. Look at that. And she's connected. I mean, I don't know what's going on here. This is quite a puzzle. You see, I started to work on. Can you see? I'm starting to work with the image. In other words. And I think if we do that with these images, but always in relation to Gaia, you see. Just my last word. The whole idea, the whole point is to connect with Gaia. Not to get lost in all these images, which you can do so easily, but to bring this as a way of helping to heal the crisis and heal ourselves. And also as a recognition of who Gaia is, that she's the entity that makes these images. This image has come from Gaia. She made it. We received it. And we need to receive it with grace and dignity and deep respect and learn from its wisdom. Thank you, everybody. Okay, I'll stop sharing. There we are. So now, over to you, Bia and Co. I mean, I hope we've got time for questions. Have we? I hope so, or comments.
Fê, você explica para ele agora. Acho que, não. Stephan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. So now I will open in Portuguese here, and
okay,
Fernanda will be then translating back to you in English. So that's the moment you select the translator button.
Okay.
Boa.
Yes.
Posso falar, Fê, em português? Boa. Gente, agora a intenção é que a gente continue a nossa conversa com perguntas, reflexões, o que tiver vivo. E a Fê, então, só tecnologicamente, a Fê vai ficar mudando do português para o inglês. Quando a gente estiver falando português, ela vai traduzir para o inglês para o Stephan. E quando ele estiver falando em inglês, ela vai traduzir para o português. Então, se vocês quiserem mudar a língua, vocês vão ter que ficar mudando no botãozinho lá, conforme a opção que vocês quiserem ouvir. Rita.
Okay.
Stephan,
Right.
eu gostaria, eu fiquei com uma sensação do quanto que a gente precisa fazer esse exercício de imaginação, porque o saber a gente sabe, né? Ou muitas pessoas sabem, mas essa prática, essa meditação que você propôs, nas fórmulas químicas, naquilo que está acontecendo, não é tão simples, porque quando a gente vai para experiências, por exemplo, na floresta, a gente acaba envolvendo bastante a sensorialidade, como é que a gente sente aquela integralidade, né, da natureza. Mas esse exercício que você está propondo é um pouco mais sutil, assim, ele vai mais na psique, né? Não que no sensorial também não vai. Então, é só um comentário, não é uma pergunta, mas é uma vontade de poder explorar mais esse exercício de imaginação que você está propondo aqui. Mas principalmente quando a gente está num espaço rico
That's right.
de biodiversidade, não
Exactly.
é?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, this is intuition. Sorry, say, yeah. Okay. Say when. Yeah, sorry. Yes, because that's intuition, you see. You see the difference between sensing and intuition?
Yes.
See the difference? When I go into the forest sensing, I know. I lived in Costa Rica, I lived in Venezuela. I know what it's like. What it's like to walk through a coconut plantation towards the beach. That's my sensing. But when I start thinking of these chemical compounds, these little molecules and how they fit with everything, I can't see them, but I know they're there from my science. That, then that stimulates my intuition,
Yeah.
which also brings me closer to the center. Yeah, into some sort of well, I don't know. Jung called it. I think it's a real feeling of being embedded in Gaia. I think that's what it is. Something like that. But you see what I mean, Rita? I think this is more intuition.
Yes, I understand. Yes.
Yeah.
I feel just that we need to practice it more and more. Eu tinha que falar em português, né? Eu sinto que a gente precisa praticar isso mais e mais para que a nossa psique
Yeah.
se reconecte mais profundamente, né? Num nível mais profundo.
Yeah, we need to have all four together, feeling, sensing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, thank you, Rita.
Stephan, can I o Fê, ele lembra ele só, Fê, dele desligar o áudio, porque senão interfere muito na fala dele.
Oh, to turn off.
Quando...
Turn you off. Okay. All right, I get it. Like that. So I've turned you off. Okay. So who's next?
Rafa, levantou a mão. Quer falar?
Oh, I see. I'm learning how to use this language thing. Yeah.
Tem também uma pergunta no chat depois, você viu? A
Não
Carla.
vi.
Falo eu, Rita, ou vai o chat primeiro?
Pode
Pode
falar,
ir, Rafa.
pode ir, porque eu não sei quem veio primeiro.
Tá bem. Bom dia. Peço desculpas por estar aqui acamado. Estou recuperando de uma cirurgia. Obrigado, Stephan, por essa manhã. Eu vou trazer um comentário e depois algumas perguntas. Tendo em vista a visão Yanomami, que é um povo que está nesse território muito antes da composição de Gaia como pensamento mitológico na Grécia, e eles falam, principalmente nesse livro agora do Davi Copenau com Bruce Albert, A Queda do Céu, em resumo, suportar o céu, quem faz são as florestas. Em resumo, a ideia de evitar a queda do céu, cientificamente, seria evitar a queda da atmosfera. Ele constrói a ideia de que as algas conseguiram empurrar as florestas para fora das águas e as florestas empurraram construindo esse mundo onde elas vivem. Ou seja, na cosmovisão dos povos Kraô, Tucano, Makuxi, Yanomami, entre outras visões dos povos ancestrais aqui da América Latina, essa elevação da atmosfera é uma construção. Então, a gente não falaria de uma adaptação das espécies, numa teoria da evolução, mas numa construção do ambiente onde eu possa me autopreservar enquanto indivíduo, desde a bactéria que se transforma em mitocôndria até os capitalistas que criam prédios com ar-condicionados para se adaptar a esse mundo que eles estão destruindo. Então, caberia, aí vem algumas perguntas. A contraposição da visão politeísta dos povos originários e a visão monoteísta, né? Caberia uma deusa mulher ou deusas mulheres na construção de um mundo do mercado do carbono? Essa é uma pergunta meio sem sentido, mas acho que a gente está entrando nesse sentido do mercado de carbono e etc., e as deusas estão aí sendo evocadas, né? A outra pergunta...
Yes, absolutely.
Obrigado. A outra pergunta.
We have to invoke the goddess in the markets.
A gente chama muito, eu trabalho com crianças, então...
Excuse me. Sorry?
Posso só fazer mais uma pergunta, então, para juntar a conclusão? Eu trabalho muito com crianças e eu tenho trabalhado muito com elas, tentado entender qual o papel das crianças na construção do mundo que a gente sonha. Então, qual o papel das crianças na construção desse mundo onde nós vamos nos adaptar ou nós vamos nos ajustar? E como é que o senhor analisa a COP26?
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's a lot. Well, shall I answer all of? Shall I do that? Is there time? Okay, all right. Oh, turn you off. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, turn you off. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Okay. Well, those are great questions. Yeah. About children, I think we should. Our duty is to keep them in touch with original participation. That's what we have to do. And the culture will work against it very strongly. I know from my own son particularly. So that's our duty. They must keep the connection with original participation, which they're born into. Children have it naturally. And then as they grow, they can become more conscious of what it is and develop a relationship with it of tremendous friendship and collaboration. That's about children. COP. Well, let's leave that to the end. Yes, we need to bring the goddess into the markets. Yeah. I mean, I know I feel like a silly old hippie saying such a silly thing, you know. It is, I mean, but that's how it is. And how we do that, that's where skill comes in, you know. I mean, you can't walk into the market and say, Goddess, no. But it happens. You work on the God. You cultivate your psyche. You understand the importance of the goddess in your own personal life, in your life. It becomes part of your life. And then you don't have to mention goddesses or anything. You just do it, you know. It's something like, it's more like that. It's a form of action, activism. I mean, we have students at Schumacher College who are doing that. I was amazed. I turned on the radio yesterday at lunchtime, and there was one of our MSc students, Nigel Topping, who is now the British champion for international climate change negotiations or something. And he was at COP26 speaking for about 10 minutes on the radio. He's one of our students. He is embodying the feminine in every word he says, because he worked with us at Schumacher College. And so I think that's what happens. You know, you cultivate it in your life, the goddess. You cultivate her. You allow yourself to see a forest as a goddess. Or somehow you work with the goddess, or with the guy. I prefer Gaia. I don't like goddess so much, I must say. I'm much more, goddess is too human for me. Gaia I like because Gaia's, you know, human and other than human at the same time. So I don't goddess, under certain circumstances, but not in this case. It's not a goddess. This is Gaia. Anyway, she's technically not a goddess because Gaia is the mother of all the goddesses. You can't say that Gaia is a goddess because she's the mother of them all, you see. So it's the wrong idea to think about bringing the goddess into the marketplace. You have to bring Gaia into the marketplace. Gaia, the forest, the living forest, the actual lakes and streams and rivers. Not the sort of goddess, you know, the sort of, you can have a sort of a metaphysical hippie goddess. You can have that one if you like as well, but it's got to be the earth, Gaia, that goddess. No, not the goddess, sorry. Gaia, not the goddess. And COP, well, I'm afraid I'm with Greta on this one. Although Nigel Topping, one of my students who I mentioned, he's quite optimistic the business is changing in the right direction. He tends to be an optimist. At least I think something will happen, but I don't think we're going to get anywhere near 1.5. I think we're going to end up at probably 2.3, 2.4. Maybe more. That's going to be bloody awful, really. So that's my feeling, you know. I'm really, it's horrible. So I don't want to, well, one has to dwell on the horror of it. But at the same time, it hasn't happened yet. And we have got a chance. We just have to do, each of us, what we can, you know. That's my view. What can I do? I can share this with you. What else can I do? I mean, I study, you know, and I do my work, and I spend a lot of time on my own, reading and thinking, and then I share with you. Thank you for the privilege. That's what I hope you've enjoyed it anyway, but you can tell me if it's a load of rubbish, tell me, because I need to know. And then each of you will do your own thing somewhere, wherever you happen to be. Maybe, I don't know what it'll be. Something small, something big, doesn't matter, something. And then we know from complexity theory, you know, the network theory from the mathematics, that if you have networks of people like we now have all over the world, thanks to this technology, which of course is also destroying the world, we can use it to network. You know, it's the fungal mycelial idea. And it can, this wave of love and Gaian connection can just spread around who knows, it might spread around the planet just quickly enough to avoid the worst of it. It's possible. So that's why there's always hope. One of the nurses in hospital, when I was in hospital just now, she was a lovely black African nurse. At my worst moment, she came in the room. It was dark, you know, and I was covered in sweat and I was having a blood transfusion. And she came up to me and she said, "Stefan," or something like that. "My name is Hope. There is always hope." And she looked after me all that night and all the next night, you know. So there's always hope. Okay, so tell me, any other questions?
Você consegue traduzir para ele a pergunta da Carla, que está ali um pouquinho mais para cima do chat, 10h59? E lembrar ele, continuar lembrando ele de desligar e ligar, que está funcionando.
Okay, go ahead. Let me see if I can see you all. Wow, I can see just... Oh, hang on, wait a minute. There's Thomas. Hi, Thomas. How nice to see you.
Hello, Stephan. Very nice to see you, man.
Yeah, lovely to see you. I thought you were there. You know, we know we made the app. You know that, don't you? The Deep Time Walk app. We made it. You know that.
Yes, I know. I got so happy. Congrats.
I know, it's
amazing.
good, isn't it? Thank you for your help at the
Super.
beginning. You were there right from the beginning. Remember? That was brilliant.
I know. I remember. In the bus we talked. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So tell me, Daniela, it's you who want to say something, huh?
Stephan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Yes.
Can you select Portuguese again?
Yes, select Portuguese. Yes.
It will translate to you the questions.
Okay. No, I'm trying to find her. Carla. Oh, yeah, there she is. I can see Carla. Yeah, okay, there she is. Oh, that's nice. Hello. Lovely. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's very difficult. I think yeah, it's a great question. You know, my conclusion from just observing myself in relation to that, yeah, in relation to myself, is that I need somewhere wild. And I suspect it's not just me. I think everybody needs contact with something wild, even if it's very small. Maybe the size of this room, you know? So this is what? I mean, it's quite a big room. 10 meters by 10 meters, or 8 meters by 8 meters. A little jungle somewhere. Small jungles. The British government has just done something really good. I can't believe that this government does anything good. But anyway, they've given money to make small gardens in cities. I mean, they're conventional gardens. They won't be jungles. I think we need jungles in the city. Of course, people have to feel safe. That's the thing. You know, that's another issue. But somewhere you can just go. Say in Sao Paulo, I'm on a busy street, right? And I see a little. This happens in India. You see a little gate, and there's a big tree behind, and you think, oh, I'll go in there. You go in the gate, and there's this big banyan tree or fig tree, and it's so full of presence, and it's like stepping into another world compared to all the traffic behind you, and suddenly, puff, you're in the presence of the eternal, and of the depth and ancientness of nature, and you feel it so powerfully, you know. And this is our fundamental human right, along with water and food and clothing and shelter. Fundamental human right to feel our Pachamama, our mother. You know, really that feeling of the earth as our mother. So we have to have wild places for that, I think. It has to be wild as possible. But on a small scale, bigger the better. Okay, thank you. That's a lovely question, Carla. Thank you.
A Carol depois fez uma pergunta que eu acho que ele acabou já respondendo também. Eu vou abrir para a Ana Tornaghi primeiro, que eu acho que na ordem aqui que apareceu para mim. Quer fazer sua pergunta, Ana? Ou comentário?
Sim, mais um comentário que eu acho que faz sentido aqui, a partir do que o Rafa traz também. A ideia de que, para pelo menos a maior parte dos povos originários que eu tenho tido contato, quando se fala em floresta, né, e acho que é interessante trazer clareza sobre isso, não se fala em árvore só, mas em todos os seres que ali vivem, os visíveis e os não visíveis, os encantados estão ali, os nossos ancestrais ali, e os que ainda virão também estão presentes. Então tem essa noção da floresta que sustenta o céu, né? É a floresta composta de todas essas vidas que estão em comunhão ali de alguma forma. E acho que isso conversa muito com o que o Stephan vinha trazendo, né? Que vem para além do sentir a floresta, mas experienciar a floresta de alguma forma a partir de um outro lugar. Então, queria só acrescentar essa observação, como se fosse dar um mergulho, um passozinho mais a fundo dentro do que o Rafa trouxe, que ele trouxe de uma forma muito sintética, mas que eu acho que esse parêntese vale abrir. Então, obrigada por trazer isso, Rafa, e só queria trazer isso, e acho que de alguma forma conecta muito com isso que a Carla traz também, né? Eu tenho esse privilégio de morar nesse cantinho aqui, que é um pedaço pequeno, mas esses dias, por exemplo, tem momentos que eu sinto que a batida do meu coração se afastou da batida da terra, e aí eu deito no chão, na grama, e fico no meio do mato quando eu posso, e fico olhando. Então é só trazer essa ideia de que tem duas formas ou mais formas diferentes de estar nesse mato ou nessa floresta, assim. Eu posso só sentar e ler um livro, ou eu posso mergulhar. Então, queria trazer esse comentário que, enfim, me pareceu que estava alinhado com o que a gente estava falando.
That's true. I mean, yes, you're quite right, of course. I mean, I'm probably too much of a book person, I guess, you know. It's probably true. I mean, there are different routes into it. I mean, I couldn't do it without books, personally. You know, but you're right, of course. Just to go into the forest and feel your heartbeat, especially in South America. Oh God, it's so much easier than in England, I tell you. It's very hard for me in England sometimes. Not that I want you to feel sorry for me, but it's difficult. It's difficult, really, for someone born in Latin America to be so far away from the beaches and things, you know. And what you have, I know what you have. So I know it's much easier for you. Now let me see about this. What you said is very important about the spirits. You see, would you agree then that for the Yanomami, the forest is a psyche? It's not just trees; it's psyche, it's soul. It's full of souls. Everything's full of souls, isn't it? I mean, I walk through the path in the forest, and this tree becomes my grandfather. Or, I mean, I can't imagine the richness of it. The richness must be unbelievable. I mean, every butterfly must have its own soul, its own unique qualities. I mean, amazing. You know, really, quite fantastic. Yes. So, that's what we need. But the thing is, we come from where we come from. We Westerners who've dominated the planet, you know. We've come from a place of being unbelievably destructive. I mean, really destructive. So, it's all very well to say the indigenous people, you know, how they, of course, but the question is, how can we see it like that? How can I see it? How can every individual see it in their own way like that? Because that's our, I keep saying it's our fundamental human right. And it has something to do with this agency in nature, this intelligence. That's my conclusion, which of course the Yanomami know very well. But you know, we have to, and you of course remember you're in Brazil, so you have another advantage in that you're on land where there are still indigenous people living, practicing, experiencing still, maybe not the full-blown experience because they've all had contact with modernity, but still a very deep experience of the spirits of the forest still. That's not happening anywhere near me. And that's why I love connecting with South America, because I can start to feel it again, you know. So, well, where does this lead us? Well, I don't know. This is as far as I've got, you know. I mean, I'm just sharing some of my pathways with you, that's all. And that's as far as I've got. I know there's a lot more, and of course the indigenous perspective is where that richness is. But one has to develop slowly, step by step, step by step, step by step. You know, I can't, much as I want to, I can't be like a Yanomami right now. To some extent I can. So I have to become, well, I have to find that indigenous perspective where I am now in my own situation. Everyone here, in my case, in England, in the winter, starting the winter, working with this what things I'm doing here. That's all I can do. And I hope that I can experience the Yanomami. The same, I hope, put it this way, I hope that the Anima Mundi, which has shown the Yanomami herself in a Yanomami way, has shown herself to the Yanomami in a Yanomami way, which can only happen through the Yanomami in that forest with all those organisms. She shows herself, the Anima Mundi shows herself there. The same Anima Mundi can show herself, but differently, to me right here in this little dark room in England, if I deserve it. And not just to me, I mean, why just to me? To everybody. Yeah, everybody. If tomorrow we can't wave a magic wand, but if I had a magic wand, I would wave, and everyone, tomorrow morning, everyone would wake up knowing this. And then everyone would sort of go to the COP meeting, and they'd think, what's the problem? Of course, no problem. We fix it in a couple of days, a whole new economic system fixed in 2 days.
Ana, quer fazer sua pergunta ou trazer teu comentário? Ana Borba.
Oi, tá. Bom, vou fazer um comentário, vou compartilhar aqui uma coisa que aconteceu comigo recentemente e estou achando que aqui é o espaço diante de todos os assuntos que estão sendo abordados. Eu sou uma engenheira civil que trabalho com lixo há 2 décadas e tive Rafa como meu professor na Floresta Educadora recentemente, num curso que ele ministrou maravilhosamente. E eu sou uma pessoa que sempre vivi nas cidades, embora tenha tido uma infância um pouco ligada à natureza na praia, no litoral de Pernambuco, mas eu tenho uma dificuldade de separar os materiais, né? Então, eu vou mostrar aqui uma obra que eu fiz com Rafa, que foi uma escultura em homenagem à terra, né? Uma coisa que eu fiz com coisas que sobraram na minha casa, folhas, raízes que se estragaram, coisas assim. E quando acabou essa aula de fazer a escultura com materiais da terra, eu fiz uma outra escultura com os materiais que estavam no lixo da minha casa também, que, na minha visão, também vieram da terra, mesmo sendo plástico, metal, alumínio, sei lá, uma infinidade de coisas que estão poluindo, assim, a nossa terra, né? Então, é uma coisa que vem da terra e, ao mesmo tempo, não consegue voltar para a terra, né? Eu tenho vivido aí essa complexidade de tentar educar com tantas dúvidas, porque depois de fazer vários projetos com esses materiais, resíduos da cidade, do lixo urbano, eu me vejo nessa floresta urbana, sabe? Assim, e é uma floresta urbana onde a maioria dos seres humanos estão vivendo na Terra, né? Então, eu tenho, enfim, trouxe de compartilhar isso para ouvir um pouco do que Stephan acha sobre essa circularidade também, essa respeito e honrar todos esses materiais que também vieram de algum lugar para suprir as necessidades da gente aqui nas cidades de alguma maneira. Gratidão, adorei aqui o momento.
Yeah. Well, what did I say? Yeah, thank you. That's a really good observation and question. I know. Well, ideally, every molecule or every atom we take from nature, we would do with tremendous reverence. And we would say to them, we'll make sure you go back into the cycles of Gaia one day. Or if not, we'll keep you in a closed cycle of our own. So very few of you will get back out and cause damage. I mean, the thing is, it brings up an interesting question. How much are we allowed to do with Gaia? Does she want us to be Yanomami all the time? Or does she want something other? Does she want more? Or does she want other things as well as the Yanomami? I don't know the answer to that question, but I mean, the point is we are where we are. You know, I suppose I speak as a scientist, you know, trained in science, and so it's a very harsh training that the Earth has no soul, and it's very much the mainstream view that's destroying the planet. So we have to ask, but nevertheless, we do, I think, we are allowed by Gaia to mine some minerals. What I'm trying to say is that I think she needs us, she needs Western culture in some way. Western culture in modernity is not a complete dead loss, in other words. There's something about it that she needs. And I suspect what it is has to do with the fact that the sun is now very, very bright. This is James Lovelock from my teacher, you know. And that soon, in a few centuries' time, maybe, even under the best of circumstances, the climate would be changing. And Gaia, to keep going, would need to have a technological species like us that would be able to help her to, if you like, self-regulate her climate. And we can only do that with satellites and data and computers and that kind of thing. But not too much, you know, just the right amount, but just in her service. So she can last a little bit longer. So she has a little bit more chance to realize what she wants to realize through us. And the Yanomami and everybody else, but including the scientific culture, which is not for nothing. It's not for nothing that we now know the details of how Gaia came to be, for factual details. I'm not talking about, you know, there are actual real things that happened in the real world, in the physical world. That's, you see, what we bring somehow in the West. We bring that. So we have a right to be here. Western culture has a right to be here, and Gaia needs us. But we mustn't take too much from her. You know, we mustn't mine too many minerals and cut down too many forests and take too much land. We have those planetary boundary ideas. We know roughly from the science where those boundaries are. How much land can we take, where, etc. So then we can contribute what we have to contribute to her. Which is a kind of culture. It's a Gaian culture. So you see, that's the thing about recent. Of course, as you say, we've gone way too far. We're taking too many minerals and we're throwing them away and creating havoc. So you've got to. The simple answer is we have to withdraw. We have to retreat. James Lovelock used to. I think it was James Lovelock used to talk about sustainable retreat. I like that idea. You know, withdraw from Gaia. And your work with recycling is very important. You know, we need to know how to recycle those minerals, those metals, and whatever. Given the mess we've got, at least you can do some experiments. You can try a few things, maybe. You know, maybe if you find some way of separating the aluminium or one kind of plastic from another kind of plastic, and you find a market for the stuff, something like that. You know, that's what you can do. You can help to start that process. You can talk about it, start the conversation in your workplace about it. Start talking to people in your workplace. How do we value these minerals? Do they have a soul? Well, what would the Yanomami say about this? Okay, thank you. That was these are lovely questions, I must say. Yeah. So, let's see, where are we?
A gente está no finalzinho. Tem uma pessoa que está desligada, não sei qual é o seu nome, Cirício, que está com a câmera desligada, mas levantou a mão. Eu não sei se você está aí. Eba!
Opa, bom dia, tá ouvindo?
Sim, ouvindo e vendo agora. Pode falar.
Bom dia a todos. Eu peço desculpa porque eu estou no horário de trabalho, só que de todo modo eu não queria perder, e ainda bem que eu não perdi, né, o nosso encontro aqui de hoje. Professor Stephan, desde já, muito obrigado pelas suas palavras, né, do começo ao final da sua fala, eu me arrepiando, né, a questão da sensibilidade da emoção que trouxe para a gente hoje. Eu acredito que o Anima se apresentou no dia de hoje e se apresentou nessa sala. Muito obrigado aí pelo que o senhor trouxe hoje. Eu não uma visão, né, de grande sensibilidade. E aí, inclusive, com música, né, uma palavra que vem através de música, né, música que toca, música que nos traz sensibilidade, né, a todo esse contexto. Professor, são tantas questões que eu tenho na minha cabeça, né, juntamente aqui ao meu trabalho, juntamente à minha prática de vida, a esse todo Anima Mundi que nos está presente hoje, mas eu vou tentar organizar aqui o que eu estou querendo trazer para o senhor hoje. Professor Gaia, enquanto algo vivo, enquanto algo sensível, enquanto algo consciente, né, a vida que anima tudo isso, ela nos está constantemente falando a partir de diferentes linguagens. Como o senhor consegue, e aí o senhor acredito que traz de tudo que já trouxe até hoje, se apresenta hoje diante de uma fronteira, porque é muito difícil a gente captar uma linguagem sensível. Linguagem sensível ética que se mostra a partir de uma imaginação, de uma inconsciência, ou de uma consciência que é trazida a partir desse Anima Mundi. Então, diante de tudo que o senhor já tem visto, feito, analisado, sentido, como trazer isso diante de um aspecto científico e diante dessa ciência amorosa, num contexto hoje que a gente sabe que a ciência ela se apresenta talvez como uma das melhores soluções para todos os problemas originados por nós mesmos. Talvez, eu queria saber do senhor, está na ciência amorosa a resposta de tudo isso? Ou na negação de que a ciência também não pode responder a tudo? Que outros conhecimentos tradicionais, inclusive, eles podem dar voz a essa Gaia, né, a essa consciência que se apresenta. Como a gente, e eu sou geógrafo, como a gente tentar captar isso e trazer à luz da ciência, para que sim a gente seja ouvido, seja visto, seja não colocados, não apresentados como loucos, mas diante de um método, diante de uma perspectiva sensível, não sei, trazer o que Gaia quer nos falar. Eu gostaria de saber o que o senhor tem a falar sobre isso. Muito obrigado, professor. E parabéns pela organização do evento, pela tradução, né, que me auxiliou hoje muito a entender algo que está além da minha possibilidade, né? Muito obrigado.
Yeah, well, it's not easy. I mean, it's easy if you're not in mainstream science. If you're in mainstream science, it's more difficult because it's taboo. All of this is taboo. But I mean, I have some experience with some young undergraduates at Exeter University. No, they're master's degree students. They're master's students at Exeter University. And I'm invited to go and talk to them about deep ecology and that sort of thing. And they're doing global systems. They're studying global systems, so it's very cognitive. But it's run by Tim Lenton, who's very Gaian, you know. So they bring me along, and I can get them to meditate on clouds very easily. We could take that cycle, for example, you know, the cloud feedback I showed you. I could do that with them, and I could say, okay, we're in the room, but let's just think of clouds as we go around, and we sort of pause a bit and meditate on clouds. And you can say, anyone want to say anything about what they're visualizing in relation to clouds right now? Someone might say, I can see cumulonimbus, I can see stratus, or okay, then we go around the loop like that. So they're very cognitive people. I mean, they know the science backwards, and they've probably modeled it mathematically, you know, to a very high level of sophistication. But they've never done this before. And then we just go around that feedback, step by step, going around the mandala. You don't mention the word mandala. Never say the word mandala. Never. Unless, it depends, you know. maybe in the coffee break, one of the students comes up to you and might say, hey, you know, I was reading. It's quite possible with students these days. You might have been reading something. So that reminds me of a mandala. Yes, then you can say that's a mandala. But I wouldn't say that right out. I just let them experience the mandala. You don't have to give it a name. The minute you give it a name, it destroys it. So let the mandala come, the mandala awareness that's in the mandala come through the meditation. And I think a lot of young people nowadays are ready for that. Young scientists, I mean. They're thirsty for it. They know that's what's required. They just know. In their bodies, they know, because the crisis is so close now. Our animal bodies know it. And these young scientists know it, you see. I remember one of the young doctors who looked after me in the hospital. She was a most wonderful person. I knew she knew something the older ones didn't know. You know, it's really lovely. We had a very lovely rapport. Although we never said anything about, you know, metaphysics or philosophy, but you see what I mean. It seems to be something the young scientists have. I mean, it's in not all of them, but there's something stirring, and of course, what it is, it's Gaia coming back into our consciousness from the unconscious. Or from the original participation. We just need to make sure. Well, let's hope it's not too late. You see. That's why I'm doing the work I'm doing with this, speaking about it like this. Very focusing very much on original participation and the Anima Mundi, the unconscious, as Jung would call it, and Jung himself, and all those, the whole tradition. It's a very important tradition, the tradition that Jung initiated. It's a way back into nature. So, don't be ashamed to do that. I don't know if are you a scientist, Siricio? Is he a scientist? I can't see. Oh, hang on. I need to turn on. Yes. Oh, yeah, geographer. Well, that's close. You're a geographer. That's close. Anyway, you see what I mean. So you can see landscape like that. You could talk about landscapes. Actually, for landscape, Gaia is really good. I mean, as a geographer, you can't have a better concept than Gaia. I mean, it's perfect for geography because it integrates everything. That's what happened with me when I first encountered Gaia. It was an incredibly when I first met Lovelock, you know, and started talking to him, and I started getting a sense of what he meant. And it was a wonderful integrative experience. You know, I felt, wow, now I can feel how the Earth is so round, and to the north it goes up to Scotland and Norway and Greenland and the ice cap, and then to the south, Africa and, you know, Antarctica and West. I could feel the whole planet for the first time, really, as a real living ecosystem. It was fantastic. So that's very integrative. In geography, it gives you that, you see. So you just inject a bit of Gaia into geography, and then you're very deeply in Gaia like that, deeply immersed in the livingness of the landscape. So it's very easy with geographers. I did some research with one of my colleagues, one of our students, on qualitative perception of landscapes, which we analysed statistically, and we found people really do feel what seem to be objective qualities in the landscape. The landscapes speak to them about themselves. Am I healthy? Am I not healthy? Just like an animal does. We found that with animals. Now we've also found it with landscapes, that they speak to us about how healthy they are. We can pick it up, and we can analyse that statistically. We can pick it up. Our animal bodies know whether a landscape is healthy or not. We've shown that scientifically. You can use that kind of science, you see. And if you want other stuff, you can have complexity theory and chaos theory. There's the mathematics that gives you the most fabulous patterns that look just like nature. And then you can ask, why is it mathematics gives us these beautiful patterns that are like nature? And you can go into the nature of numbers from a mythological point of view. And mathematicians find that very interesting indeed, because they find mathematics, many of them think mathematics is the foundation of everything, which of course it isn't, but it's still interesting to look at it mathematics mythologically, you see. So no matter where you touch in science, you can bring it in. Yeah. But you have to be, you know, I don't know, you have to be subtle about it, of course. You have to be subtle about it, subtle as you can. There are some people I wouldn't dream of talking to, because they'd just make mincemeat of me, you know. Like so, well, and the obvious example is Richard Dawkins, of course. Who I have great respect for Richard Dawkins. I really do. He's a brilliant man. But I don't think we'd ever be able to understand he'd never understand this. And he'd tear it to pieces, I'd come out of meeting with him feeling really awful, I should imagine. Apart from the fact he's a very nice man, actually. So anyway, anybody else want to say something?
Stephan, just if I may, just wanted to mention one thing. I've heard from a class, there is this cosmologist called Brian Swaim.
Brian Swim, I know him.
Yeah,
Brian
he's
Swim.
great. Swim, thank you.
Yeah, I know
Swim.
Brian
And
Swim.
he has this sentence I've heard in a class of him, which I love, and I would like you to talk about it. He says that the journey of the universe is to create diversity, subjectivity, and communion. What do you think about it? It sounded so beautiful and amazing. And when I heard about subjectivity also, I think, well, what is subjectivity in nature, right? What is subjectivity in science?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you can comment on that phrase, because it really opened my mind and I love it.
Can you say those three words again?
Yes. Yes, it's diversity.
Diversity, yeah.
Subjectivity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And communion.
Communion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. First of all, let me tell you, I've met Brian Swim here at Schumacher College long ago, and he's a wonderful person. He's a wonderful scientist. Wow. And I love his writing. He's just spot on. I mean, he's really great. I'm a great fan. I really like Brian Swim. Very dear, wonderful person. So he's talking about diversity, subjectivity, and communion. Yes. Well, of course, the thing is they're all interrelated, right? I'd put them in a feedback. That's the first thing I would do. That's my first impulse, you see. So I'm just writing it down as a feedback. Diversity, subjectivity, communion. Communion, I had to put it like this. So now they relate to each other. There's no longer a linear thing, you see. They relate to each other. So you can start anywhere you like. Okay, more diversity means more subjectivity, right? That means the more species I have in my ecosystem, the more different subjects, the more different kinds of styles of consciousness there are, and the more different kinds of cognitions there are. A grasshopper sees, this species of grasshopper sees this species of ant on a leaf, or this gecko sees this spider, or this leaf feels this gust of wind. And so the more diversity of structure and biological diversity, the more different kinds of subjectivity that can arise. And then, of course, that subjectivity has an energy, and the energy is communion, relationship. You have to be you're only a subject because you're aware of other subjects. So you commune with them. You have to. Even if you get eaten by something, it's still communion in Gaia's world. And because of that, because of the communion, you get diversity. I mean, for example, this is the classic example now of the mycorrhizal fungi in the soil, which my friend Merlin Sheldrake so beautifully written about. They promote the diversity of the forest, especially in the Amazon, where the soils are very poor. You know this better than me. The fungi underground, the mycorrhizal fungi, are connecting the trees and sending nutrients from one to another, and sugars and nutrients. And the fungi receive sugars as a reward. And that promotes the biodiversity of the forest, which increases its subjectivity, which increases its communion, which increases its diversity. So the whole thing becomes a feedback loop, which I think someone mentioned. It builds, like the Yanomami idea of the trees building themselves, their own habitat for themselves, life building its own habitat for itself. It becomes like that. It's a very Gaian view, that Yanomami view. Or they put it the other way around, the Gaian view is very Yanomami. I mean, Yanomami came before the science. That's a Yanomami kind of science. So where do we go with it? Well, we can meditate on it and we can experience it more for ourselves. I think it's very important to experience it for oneself more and more, but always not to keep it for oneself selfishly, but to share what one's found in some way or other, in some way, to share what one's found. And then that helps the whole.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so how are we doing? Are we over
Muito
time?
bem, estamos
Are we
muito bem, mas acabamos nosso horário, Stephan.
Right, so we finished our time. Good. All right, thank you.
Eu queria agradecer primeiramente o Stephan por ter vindo. Como eu falei, ele está passando por um momento complicado, estava no hospital alguns dias atrás e a gente conversou e ele fez questão de estar aqui hoje. Então, agradeço especialmente, Stephan, por você ter trazido, não só ter vindo, como ter trazido tanta vida junto com você. Eu sinto sempre que eu sou enfeitiçada pela sua fala, de um jeito, é um mágico, assim, eu me sinto, é um estado de encantamento muito particular. Obrigada também todas e todos por estarem aqui com a gente. A gente vai continuar amanhã, eu e Rita, e quem puder e quiser estar com a gente no mesmo horário, para a gente continuar essa conversa, refletindo a partir do que ficar vivo, do que surge e do que vai surgir, que a gente ainda não sabe. Eu queria, Ritinha, eu queria perguntar a Rita se você quer falar algo, e aí eu vou pedir para o Stephan fechar com um pouco de música.
Eu queria também agradecer demais o Stephan, ele é sempre uma fonte imensa de inspiração. E só para não deixar passar, eu queria acrescentar que sugerir a Renata Meirelles propôs aqui um filme dela, né, de 20 minutos, o Apá, que é um filme muito bonito e se relaciona muito com a nossa conversa. Então, sugeri de vocês copiarem aí o link para assistir depois, porque se desse tempo a gente via juntos, mas acho que é impossível ver aqui, mas é muito bonito. E agradecer também a participação de todos, acho que foi uma roda muito, muito fértil aqui entre nós, e a gente continua amanhã.
Eu queria agradecer a Fê também, que eu fiquei só olhando a janela e é incrível como ela traz vida na tradução ali para além. Obrigada, Fê. Eu sei que esse é um exercício, assim, eu sou completamente incapaz de fazer algo assim, então eu te admiro muito e muito obrigada por fazer essa mágica também hoje.
Maravilha.
Sou mineiro-britânico, maravilhoso. Stephan, podemos terminar com um pouco da sua música?
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you all for that experience of being able to share that. How strange to do it, from so far away, and then I'll press leave and then ping, gone. It's strange, isn't it? And I also want to thank Fernanda for your translation, which was great, and Rita and Bia for putting this together, and Luis. Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. I hope it made some sense. I really hope so. I get the feeling it did make some sense, which means I've got to go away and meditate and think, wow, it actually made sense to you. Wow, it did, didn't it? It made sense, right?
Yes, yes.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you very, very much for the opportunity to share that. As you know, I did bring everything I had into it. So now we just close with some more music from Venezuela.